Hey guys, it's Mike from Shimino's Workshop. Our latest commission is in OWK, a Korbanth OWK. This is Obi-Wan's lightsaber from episode 1 or episode 2. I believe it's in episode 2 config with the holes in the pommel, pommel, whatever you call that. It's also a 1-inch setup. We have the emitter in a 1-inch setup, 1-inch blade plug, NeoPixel Proffie based install. Also with this commission was a 1-inch NeoPixel blade, which we'll show. Okay, well, first we'll fire up. There's 5 fonts, 6 fonts. There's 6 fonts installed, along with Proffie 2.4 OS with several modifications to it. The modifications being to support the Negotiator font and several features that the Negotiator font could have. I'll go into the details when we go through that. So we can unscrew the pommel. That'll give us access to the recharge port, 2.1 millimeter recharge port, 20 mil space speaker, and if we can see in there, we can see the USB port for the Proffieboard, and the SD card is under that. We are slightly using the CoverTech screw to hold the chassis in place, just to keep it from sliding or twisting. But it's not much tension on it. Of course, we would want to loosen that screw just a little bit so that we can back this out and get access to the Proffie. In case you needed to change fonts, you can do that with the SD card, or if you needed to reprogram or access the board, we could pull it out. You can pull this out a good distance, but I would stress not to pull it out too far. There are wires going up to the LEDs and going to the pixel adapter and the switches, so it is not a fully removable chassis, right? We want to be careful not to remove it too far. The spot it's in is good because it gives you access to the recharge port and puts the speaker in a pretty good spot for sound resonance. It is a 20 mil speaker. They're not the loudest speakers, but when you have it in Hilt, you get some good sound resonance. It's actually a fairly good speaker. I believe this is the 3-watt version. Okay, so with that said, what font are we on?
This weapon is your life. You will be a Jedi. I promise. This is General Kenobi.
Okay, so that's our first font. Oh, and of course we have a kill key, not a kill switch in this one. There's a kill key. We can put that in. That will kill power. But version 2.4.
Surely we can be civilized about this.
Version 2.4 of the OS has added significant improvement to battery. You know, as long as the saber's not left on all day, especially with some pixels in there, this will last a while. Just sitting on a shelf, even just having it without the kill key in, and maybe just these LEDs running, with the 5 pixels in the blade plug, you're going to get a good amount of runtime out of this. Of course, now you put a NeoPixel blade that has 260 pixels, different story. Okay, so with that said, let's get our pommel cap back on. So the first font is the Negotiator font, and I've made a lot of made a lot of special modifications myself. to the OS to support things like battery voltage.
4.06 volts.
If you hold down the auxiliary button for about 2 seconds, it'll speak the battery voltage. Love that feature. Another feature I added was auto shut off. When the battery reaches 2.85 volts, if the saber is on, it will shut off. If the saber is off, it'll play a low battery sound that's on each font. It's basically an alarm, right? It'll play that every 15 seconds, so you'll get an audible sound if that battery reaches 2.85 volts, which is pretty low. Really, you don't want to. I charge my batteries when they get down to like 3.5. I think Proffie by default was 2.6, which I feel is way too low. I would never want to get my battery down that far. Okay, so
Let the negotiations begin.
So you turn it on, you hear a quote, you got your smooth swing. So some of the features or the modifications I added just for the Negotiator font, if you hold the power button down for a period of time, you'll get a quote. If you continue to hold it down, you'll get a reaction quote.
You've obviously never fought a Jedi, have you?
You're so powerful.
Right, so that was quote, reaction quote. If I just hold it down for, I think it's 2 seconds,
They are panicking.
and let go, you won't get the reaction quote. You'll just get Obi's quote.
They are panicking.
There are several quotes,
I guess they don't make them like they used to.
and there's several reaction quotes.
You should lay down your weapons and beg for forgiveness.
Careful.
Okay. The other modification is off sounds. So turn the saber off. You'll also randomly get additional sounds besides the in sound.
I don't want to shut down.
You get something like that. Turning it back on. Now the other thing, if you hit auxiliary, you'll get a blast, blaster bolt block. The other modification, you'll get randomized quotes or reactions. So think blaster block. The Jedi is blocking the blaster bolt with their saber. It's returning to the villain, the Roger Roger, and the Roger Roger's getting hit. Like that.
Missed me.
Okay. There's also begin drag, end drag effects, as well as begin clash, or begin lockup, end lockup. Hard to distinguish, but if you listen closely, I'll do the clash again. You can hear a sound before, you then hear the clash, and then you hear a sound after when you release. The same thing on drag. Drag is hold down, auxiliary button. So now I'm dragging, release, and then you get the end drag sound. That's just core Negotiator and core OS. Okay. So that's the Negotiator font. So one of my that's your post off sound. One of my favorites. Before I move on to the next one, we did use a Dmitry Shtok. Ignore the phone, sorry guys. Has a tendency to get stuck in there. The NeoPixel adapter, generally I would use a custom Saber Shop adapter and then add a Space Window NeoPixel PCB to the blade plug. But I was able to get hold of a Shtok NeoPixel connector, which is in there. The nice thing about that is it combines the the two features, right? You have your in-hilt NeoPixel adapter, so that can support, a blade with a TCSS style blade PCB. But it has its own lights on board. 5 of them can be configured to mimic the blade or work independent from the blade. I currently have I have it set up so that it works independent of the blade, but the blade style mimics the blade. So in effect, it's mimicking the blade, but it's wired so that it could work independently in case you want these 5 NeoPixels to work different than what the blade would do. So the nice thing about this is you can put any blade plug. Right, you don't have to worry about the blade plug having a blade side adapter. So that's nice. Okay, so I'm just going to drop that back on. I'm not going to, well, whatever, we'll do it. We'll just tighten that down a little bit. Okay. LEDs are the LEDs that are included with the hilt. They are, I guess they're not 3 or 5 millimeter. They're specialized LED, but they are they're run independently. They can be programmed independently, connecting to pads 4, 5, and 6 on the Proffieboard. And they're each resistored. Not that it needs a lot of resistance. They are blue LEDs, but I did put resistors on each one. For the customer wanted when the saber is blue, so there's 3 or 4 fonts that have blue color blade, then these LEDs will turn on. The fonts that are not blue, and I think there's 2 of them, these LEDs will remain off. That's the downside of using these included LEDs. They are just a static blue. Okay, with that said, this is the standard switch that comes with the hilt, along with the red button that's glued in place. Modification, though, was needed for the auxiliary button. This is not a button normally, so we turned it into a button that has a plunging mechanism that will hit a switch that's inside of the hilt. A little different than what I've done in the past. Normally I'll just drill out the inside of this brass piece and put a button up here. But I wanted to try something different and went with this instead. So switches in hilt, and the button is just...
You will be a Jedi, I promise.
Plunging. So 2 more fonts. One is for episode 1, one is meant to reflect episode 2. And then the second, well, 1, 2. So we'll put Duel of the Fates as the backtrack for episode 1.
This weapon is your life.
And then that's meant for episode 2. It's essentially the same font. We changed the background, the track, and we changed the quotes. I believe that's when they're chasing the bounty hunter. 1, 2. Yep. Okay, so those are the first 3 fonts. We've added the balance font twice. One with sort of an Arctic blue. I did a little mixing of color to try to get like an Arctic blue color. We'll put a blade in and show it. But this is the balance. 1, 2. So 1, 2. It has a track for background. And the Arctic blue color, so the LEDs will go on. The second balance, oh, and the ignition is a little bit different. The balance includes, I forget, 16, I think, out sounds. The customer wanted a specific out sound, so we configured this balance font to have a specific out, only one, so it doesn't randomly play. And then the second balance has a different out sound. Smooth swing, everything else is the same. Blade color here is orange. LEDs are off because it's orange. The last font is Grand Legacy from Fourzze and Purple Blade. Oh, didn't switch.
Nothing prepared me to face that enemy.
Smooth swing, Purple Blade.
This is General Kenobi.
Okay.
4.06 volts.
4.06 volts, so still the same battery. Not that we did much, but battery did not decrease in the time we spent playing with this. Okay, so remember that 4.06, we'll throw the blade in. I'll just run through the fonts one more time and showcase the blade color. Oh, obviously the other modification we made was a retention in the location. Okay.
I have a bad feeling about this. Hello there.
All right, we'll start with the Negotiator. Localized lockup, sort of a reddish, or not lockup, sorry, blaster block. Localized lockup. The first three.
This weapon is your life.
The first three fonts have the same color. The balance, that's got a lighter shade of blue, that Arctic blue that we were going for. The second balance is orange. A whitish blaster bolt, a whitish localized lockup. And then the last font is the Grand Legacy.
Nothing prepared me to face that enemy.
Purple. Okay. And then battery voltage, check.
4.02 volts.
4.02 volts. So you can see how a blade, just from that little test that we did, it went from 4.06 to 4.02. Not crazy, but a difference nonetheless. I've said it before, I'll say it again. My favorite hilt. I love the design of this. I have my own. That one has a Gothmaster chassis in it, crystal reveal, NeoPixel, you know, everything's pretty much the same. Just a Gothmaster chassis that has the dual crystal reveal. Goth doesn't support that chassis anymore, so I was lucky that I was able to find it and install it with Proffie. but definitely one of my favorites to work on. So thank you, Austin, for allowing me to work on this for you. What else? I believe Korbanth is having put this on clearance. Maybe there'll be a new version. I know KR Sabers will have an OWK and a Qui-Gon. I believe that's targeted towards the end of this year. I'm not sure what Korbanth's plans are with this. I'll have to ask Randy if he's going to maybe just be a reseller of KR Sabers version. So I hope somebody will, because I would love to continue installing these. If you're listening, for those that do plan on creating, let's solve the auxiliary button issue, and let's solve these LED issues. Maybe include RGB, or allow for easier NeoPixel setup with these. Maintain the crystal reveal. Figure out how to get a bigger battery. I think those would be the key. And then also blade retention. Maybe figure out a better spot for blade retention, or machine it during the machining process to make an installer's job a little bit easier. Just some suggestions. All right, thanks everybody for watching, and again, thanks Austin for letting me install this for you.